This episode of the Practice of Therapy podcast is brought to you by TherapyNotes. You can find out more about them by going to practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes. And also brought to you by the Practice Launch Club, an exclusive membership community for those in private practice or getting started in private practice from the Practice of Therapy. Find out more about that by going to practiceoftherapy.com/launch club. Hello, I'm Gordon Brewer, and welcome to the Practice of Therapy podcast, where we explore the business and clinical sides of running a private practice. Hello, everyone. This is Gordon Brewer, and this is the Practice of Therapy podcast. And this is episode number 239 of the podcast. And so glad you've joined me. So glad you're with me on this journey. And I'm looking forward to you hearing from my guest today, Danielle Swimm. And Danielle is the person behind the Entrepreneurial Therapist podcast. And I would commend that to you. But also, Danielle is a person that is in this whole realm of doing private practice consulting, and she is a good person to get to know. And really kind of Danielle's superpower in all of this is teaching therapists how to use their time wisely and how to better manage their time. I know we talk a lot about this in this particular episode, and this is a topic that's kind of near and dear to my heart just simply because it's something that I've had to learn along the way. I'm not really a naturally organized person, and so I've had to learn a lot of stuff in terms of keeping myself on track and learning how to better manage my time. And it really kind of started way back when I was in agency work and had to learn how to juggle all the stuff and just, taking care of session notes, doing all the documentation, all of those things that are involved in running a practice is stuff that I've had to learn along the way. And so Danielle shares with you, some tips on all of this, and we have just a great conversation about that. But before we get to my conversation with Danielle, I'd love for you to go over and check out some of the free webinars we've got here at the Practice of Therapy. This year, in 2022, one of the things that I started doing is putting some more free trainings out there. And you can go over to practiceoftherapy.com/webinars. And all of these are automated. All of them are automated webinars, and that you get to pick the time in which you watch the webinar. Each of them are about an hour long or so. And at the end of the webinars, you'll learn how to dive deeper into the different topics that we've got. The latest webinar is really geared for folks that are just getting started in their practices. And so I want to commend that to you as a resource, practiceoftherapy.com/webinars. And also, before we get to my conversation with Danielle, I'd love for you to hear some more from our sponsors, TherapyNotes, and they are to be found at practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes. Here's more about our sponsors.
As your practice grows, the systems and processes you have in place will keep your practice running smoothly. That is why it is important to have an electronic health record system that is specific to mental health providers. TherapyNotes is a complete practice management system with everything you need to manage patient records, schedule appointments, meet with patients remotely, create rich documentation, and bill insurance right at your fingertips. Their streamlined software is accessible wherever and whenever you need it. They are who Gordon uses in his practice. And did I mention that they are one of the top-rated EHRs for mental health private practices? Their support is also second to none. Be sure to check them out at practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes. Be sure to use the promo code GORDON to get 2 months free.
Hello everyone, and welcome again to the podcast. And I'm so glad for you to get to know Danielle Swimm. And we've got a really great topic today. But Danielle, tell folks a little bit about, glad you're here. And so tell folks a little bit about you and how you've landed where you've landed.
Yeah. So I started my private practice back in 2018. So I'm glad I did it pre-pandemic when the world looked really different. And then as I was starting my practice, I found that I wanted to share about what I was doing to start my practice and kind of connect with more entrepreneurial therapists. And thus came about the brand Entrepreneurial Therapist. So I just created an Instagram account, back when I was working 3 different jobs and starting my practice. And I started sharing my experience on Instagram and kind of built a community. And about 1.5 to 2 years later is when I started doing consulting for therapists too. So it's all kind of grown organically. And it's been a really good experience. So now I have my private practice is a group practice. I'm still located in Annapolis, Maryland, but we're mostly virtual since lockdown.
Right.
And then I also have entrepreneurial therapists where I have courses for therapists on practice building.
Yes. And I'm really, one of the things that I know we were talking about before we started recording, which is really kind of a passion for you. And it to be quite honest, it's a bit of a passion for me because I don't do it so well. And that's just how you get better organized in your practice. And I know that for a lot of folks, as we get busy, and I know this was my experience early on, as I got busy and I just felt like, stuff is falling through the cracks and I'm missing stuff and forgetting to do things and all of that sort of thing. So, so to kind of tell us how you kind of landed on that kind of thing.
I know. And I can tell you right now, I did it the hard way. I have a 2-year-old at home and I have a puppy. And so going into a business and I, what it's like to run multiple, you have to have a lot of balls up in the air. And so at work, I have a lot of balls up in the air and then I go home and I have a lot of things I got to do for what feels like a lot of people. And so I just wanted to get organized and kind of calm the chaos at work, because with a baby and a toddler, it's harder to do that. Right. So it really forced me to, how can I feel good about my practice and feel organized when I'm here instead of coming into the office, working, let's say like 6 to 8 hours, spinning my wheels and then leaving and feeling like I didn't get anything done, like questioning what actually happened. So I really wanted to focus on the needle moving activities to grow and not be in the weeds so much. And the biggest thing that helped me was getting really organized with my practice. And it's something I'm naturally good at. Like when I was a kid, I always liked the planners and getting everything color coded. And so it's just kind of innately who I am. And I really applied it to my own practice. I wanted something that was streamlined, that involved systems, but also just the feel of, okay, I know what's going on this week. I feel good about how things are running.
Right. Yeah. So kind of take us through kind of how you go about helping people with all of this.
Yeah.
So where there's a starting place and that sort of thing.
Right. Yeah. And so I'll give you guys, some of your listeners, like 3 organization hacks that I find work really well for private practice owners. And this works well if you're just starting out in private practice or if you're a group practice owner with a team of 30 plus clinicians, because we all need to be organized. And the first thing I found is with our notes, like this is the first ball we drop. Because none of us like doing notes. I've never met a therapist who loves doing their notes. And especially when you're in private practice, you have marketing and you have accounting and you just have so many other things that it's easy to not do your notes or to tell yourself you're going to do them at 9 p.m. when that's just not going to happen. So the best thing I found for notes was I was still writing my notes like I was in an agency where I had, maybe 4 other providers who needed to read it because we were doing a treatment team approach, where when you're in like private practice, your notes can be really short and sweet, especially with the new or newer open notes policies where clients can easily see everything that you're writing, we really want to make sure they're short and sweet and objective now more than ever. And so a hack that I've found is if you can go into your EHR, and I use Simple Practice. I believe you use TherapyNotes, right, Gordon?
Correct. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, and they all offer this where you can just have your standard progress note involve a lot of checkboxes so that you really aren't writing or typing much at all. And you can hit repopulate from the previous session, change a few checkboxes, and we really want you to only write a couple sentences, sign the note, and be done. This should take 3 minutes.
Right.
Now the execution on it is where we get stuck as therapists, because we have, maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes, ideally, before the next client. And we want to go to the bathroom, check social media, check emails. We have 2 new voicemails. So the notes can easily get put to the bottom of the list. So what I like to do is start the note as soon as the session is beginning. So if, you're about to start session and you can pull up the note and you can hit auto populate and all the boxes are checked. This starts the note, which already starts the momentum of it getting done before the session has even started. So it really holds you accountable to getting that note done and not having, 20 notes to do on a Friday. Right. We just don't want that for you.
Right. And what I would add to that is, I think too, is scheduling the time to do the notes. So if you need to put like 15 minutes between your sessions or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
and
if it's not scheduled, it won't get done.
Right, exactly. And I know a lot of therapists who do really well with scheduling sometime at the end of the week to just catch up on admin or notes. And I hear what you're saying too about like scheduling it in between so you don't have to do it all at one time. Yeah. But that's a really good hack for notes. And then the second one is for your inbox. So, and Gordon, you mentioned as you grow, it can be harder to stay organized. And that's really what I've experienced too, because as you grow, so does your inbox. So you have a ton of emails coming in that you need to manage and stay on top of. And what I found is a lot of therapists have the emails on their phone. And when you do that, it never actually allows you to take a break from work because you're constantly seeing your work emails all the time. And it's also really hard to keep them organized when you do that. And I've had this conversation with my community all the time. And some of them push back on this because it's just so normal for them to have it on the phone. But if you can get it off your phone just for a week to trial it, see how it works. And then we just have it on your laptop or on your computer where you're in your inbox. This is where we can create a good system for it. So the biggest mindset shift I want people to take away from this is your inbox is somebody else's to-do list. So I do not want you in your inbox during the time of day where you are most productive and most creative, because I want you to be moving the needle in your practice. I want you to be doing the marketing, the hard stuff like the website, copy creation, or if you're starting a social media page, that's the needle moving activities I'm referring to. I don't want you in your inbox. So if we can create some space where you're not in your inbox all the time, that will help so much. Now, therapists do make money from email because new clients are emailing to get on their calendar. We need to also be aware of what's going on in our inbox in case there's a clinical emergency or the schedule's changing. So one of the things I like to do is just do like a check engine in the morning when I am checking my inbox when I get into the office. So I call it check engine because it's literally that. I'm not responding to anything unless I absolutely have to. I'm just checking it real quick. And then I'm going into the needle moving stuff that I want to do because I'm at my best in the morning. I'm more of a morning person. And then like you were referring to with notes, I have admin time scheduled, where this is normally around 2 p.m. when I'm at my lowest energy level or towards the end of the day, because it doesn't take a whole lot of brain power to be in your inbox. So that's good if you're solo. And then if you are farther along and you can have an admin who's running your inbox or a VA, that's even better.
Right. Right. What I love about that, and this is something that I've try to encourage people to do as well, is look at when your energy levels are the best. And I think the stuff that is, like you said, Danielle, is that the stuff that takes more energy, do that when your energy level is the highest. Yeah. And that's an real important piece, I think.
Yeah, there's a book by, I think, Brian Tracy called like Eat the Frog First or something along those lines.
Yes.
And it's that concept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So
yeah. So the inbox is a good one to keep organized, because honestly, if your inbox is organized, you just feel more organized in your practice in general. And then that third productivity hack is actually my favorite. So this is really about organizing your schedule. And this is really speaks to your energy levels too. So one of the ways I like to do this is to get a big Amazon like sticky note that you can put on the wall. And it's just a big sticky note that you can put on the wall, and then you can stand up and you can brainstorm what you want the perfect work day to look like for you. Like what time are you starting? What time are you ending? What are you doing in between? And the focus really is, how do you feel? So I don't want you to worry at first about numbers or clients or finances. I want this to just be pretend money's not an issue and you can work any hours for any amount of time. What would it look like? Because I think, and I'm sure you've noticed this too, Gordon, like therapists come into private practice and just take on the same schedule that they had wherever they were working before. And this really helps like break through those limits of, do you want to go to yoga at lunchtime? Do you want to like end by 3 p.m.? Do you want to start early? Just like really map out what you want your schedule to look like. And then once you do that, I like the color coding method of having like an orange sticky for marketing. So where can we put the marketing block in that needs to go in that week? And then like a green sticky for Finance Friday is what I call mine, where I'm just in the finances looking at how the week went before. And this helps you really juggle all the hats that you're wearing in private practice, because this is where we all get overwhelmed by it, no matter what level you're at. And for me, I'm such a visual person that I really like to see the different colors, what days they're happening. And this is an ideal scenario. So if kids get sick or something else happens, it's okay if things move around some, but we really want something mapped out for you so you know where your attention needs to be once you get in the office.
Yeah.
We don't want you getting in and then figuring that out.
Right. Right. Yeah. And it's like we said earlier, if it doesn't get scheduled, it's probably not going to get done, or you end up being too much in firefighting mode where you're just reacting to what is handed to you versus really thinking about it out. There's a grid that I think it was developed by, I've heard that it was developed by Benjamin Franklin, but it was about the use of our time. Things that are urgent versus not urgent, and then things that are important versus not important. So if you were to put that on a grid, like important, not important, and then, and then urgent, not urgent, really the space we need to live in is in the stuff that is important, but not urgent.
Right. Yeah. And Franklin's view on time is fascinating. Yeah. So if he has anything that he's structured about time, like we want to pay attention to it.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I learned that years ago when I was working for an agency. They would give us all the Franklin Covey planner, which I guess it's still around. I've switched to another planner, the Full Focus planner from Michael Hyatt and Company. So that was a little blatant plug for them, but I going back to your, kind of figuring out your ideal day, that is one of the sections in that planner that is really, really important, I think, piece for us to kind of figure out, because our work as therapists is very schedule driven. And so we need to have control over that rather than just reacting to it. And the other thing I would add, and hopefully I think you would probably agree with this, Danielle, is create your schedule and stick to it. Don't try to schedule people. We want to be nice and flexible to some degree, but once you block off that time for clients, don't try to start plug people in at times that you really had planned for something else.
Yeah. And that's what I tell people too. It's like, if you don't like your schedule, if you feel like you're being overworked in your practice, look at the mirror and get mad at your boss, because it's you.
Yeah.
Like, you're the one doing it to yourself. And that's the hard truth. And so I have to do this with myself all the time because I love what I do. So I will be like, oh, this sounds exciting. Let me do it during this time. And if I can do this exercise, it also helps, I think, see therapists can get burnt out really quickly if you're only doing one-to-one sessions. So a lot of them in private practice are very entrepreneurial and they want to scale up and add something else into the mix. But they're wondering, when do I have the time to make my first hire? When do I have the time to start the online course, to start the podcast? So let's do this. Let's do a time audit to see where your time is actually going now. And then let's structure out what your ideal day is. And if you do those two things, that's when you can be really intentional with your time and start to put in those creative blocks where you can scale up and add that additional revenue stream in beyond the one-to-one. So it's really powerful. And I think a lot of us as therapists are used to being very disciplined and we have a lot of willpower. But when it comes to working for yourself and or managing other people too, it's a whole new ball game. So you really got to press the gas pedal on learning the organization because it helps increase the productivity too.
Right. Yeah. So what are some other things that kind of come to mind? I love those 3 hacks. Those are perfect. What are some other things that come to mind for you, Danielle, when you think about kind of being better organized with our time and our time management stuff?
Yeah, so I mostly work with female therapists. And so one of my favorite exercises to do is if you can picture your energy kind of like you would a sand bucket. So if we have a sand bucket and we're just pouring water into the bucket and there's a lot of holes in the bucket, then the water's draining out at really quick speeds. And we keep having to pour water in the bucket really quickly to keep it full. So for females, especially with little kids at home, or if you're a caretaker of any kind, of like an older parent or niece and nephew, you really want to look at where are your holes in your bucket. And this is outside of work big time for a lot of us, because there is so much energy output happening in like the invisible workload when you go home, all of that comes up. And so really, if you just go throughout an entire week where you're like, where am I feeling most drained in my day as a human, not just a business owner? And it could be the smallest things that I found, coaching some therapists, that laundry was a huge hole in their bucket. And just patching that hole by creating a better system around it or delegating it out gave them so much more energy to then produce in their practice. That they never even considered that before. Right. So it's like we really want to look at being more organized overall by looking at what's draining your energy the most during this season of your life.
Right. And I think that leads into just the whole notion of outsourcing. I think one of the things that I think particularly for folks that are just getting started in practice, there is some necessity to bootstrapping and doing a lot of the stuff yourself while you have the time. But once you get busy with clients and all the other stuff of life, that's when you really need to look at outsourcing some of the stuff that you've been spending your time on. And one in particular that comes to mind is outsourcing the just the intake process for clients, as far as hiring maybe a virtual assistant to answer the phones and do the scheduling and that kind of thing. And then there's several other things that we can begin to outsource and not necessarily take on all the time.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, what's the biggest hole in your bucket with your practice? And
Mm-hmm.
the intake or the calls are going to be the biggest drainage for most therapists because you're doing that in between sessions already.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. So I agree. And delegating that out and then going through, your week or your month, like where I know there's a lot of resistance I've noticed, and you might have noticed this too with, oh, I can't delegate yet because of X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we can really switch the mindset to like, let's pretend there's an easy solution to this and look for the solution through that lens instead of I can't afford it, I'm not big enough yet, XYZ, like let's look for the solution in it because there is one.
Yeah. And a lot of times when I hear that argument, I can't afford it. I usually think, well, you can, if you don't do it, you can't afford it.
Right.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. Because our time as therapists and counselors, our most valuable asset is our time and our expertise. And that's what people are paying us for.
Right. Yeah. And so you want to be intentional with it too, because it can also go, when I was a one-man show, going from a client consultation that might be really heavy to now you're starting sessions for the day. Like that's just so draining on your energy level. And if you can have somebody else answering the phone instead of you like all of a sudden answering the phone when you weren't expecting a new client call, and it's a distressed mother trying to find therapy for her child, it just puts you in a different state energetically and with your mindset going into sessions where you have to hold space for a lot of people.
Exactly right. Yeah. And so, so really the importance of outsourcing. And I would say also outsourcing those things that tend to drain your energy, things that you don't enjoy doing that somebody else can do.
Yeah. And somebody else can do it better.
Yes.
Like that. Yes. I'm sure you have found that too. Like my admin is so much better at having the dashboard for where all the referrals are coming in, where I was kind of like half doing it some weeks because I just had too much on my plate, where she's really good at keeping those systems organized that I've wanted organized this whole time.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Great stuff. Well, Danielle, I want to be respectful of your time. Tell folks how they can get in touch with you and connect with you around the things that you're doing.
Yeah, sure. So you can find me at the Entrepreneurial Therapist podcast. You can also find me on Instagram at the Entrepreneurial Therapist, or you could check out my website, which is the same, www.theentrepreneurialtherapist.com.
Well, Danielle, I hope we're going to be having a conversation again. I'd love to have you back. Well, again, thanks to Danielle for joining me on the podcast. And be sure to check out her podcast, The Entrepreneurial Therapist. And you can find links here in the show notes and the show summary for her things and also her resources and just helping other therapists become be able to manage their time better. And I know, as I mentioned at the beginning, this is a topic that I have to put a lot of work into along the way. I know there was one thing that I mentioned in the podcast, and this is a resource that I'd really not a resource, but really more of a tool that I use every single day, and that is the Full Focus Planner. And you can find out more about that particular planner by going to practiceoftherapy.com/full-focus-planner. And full disclosure and transparency here, if you use that link, that is an affiliate link. So if you decide to purchase the planner, I do get a commission at no extra cost to you. So I like to be just transparent about those things so that you know about those particular things. And also love for you to go over and check out the free webinars that we've got going on. These are automated webinars, and you can find out more about them by going to practiceoftherapy.com/webinars. therapynotes.com/webinars. And you can learn some new stuff. And as I mentioned, these are automated webinars, so you get to pick the time that is convenient for you to view the automated webinars. So be sure and check that out, practiceoftherapy.com/webinars. And again, big thanks to our sponsors for the podcast, TherapyNotes. Again, you can find out more about them by going to practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes. And if you go to that link, be sure and use the promo code just Gordon, GORDON, to get 2 months for free. And finally, check out the Practice Launch Club by going to practiceoftherapy.com/launch club. And this is an exclusive membership community for those folks that are getting started in private practice. So find out more about that by going to practiceoftherapy.com/launch club. And again, thanks folks for listening to the podcast, and hope you'll take time to follow us wherever you might be listening to the podcast. Leave us a review, rate us, all of those good things, and share with your friends. We'd love to have more people with us on this journey. So take care, folks, and look forward to being in your ears here in future episodes. You have been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, part of the PsychCraft network of podcasts. Please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com for more information, resources, and tools to help you in starting, building, and growing your private practice. And if you haven't done so already, please sign up to receive the free Private Practice Startup Guide at practiceoftherapy.com. The information in this podcast is intended to be accurate and authoritative concerning the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, or producers are rendering legal, accounting, or clinical advice. If you need a professional, you should find the right person for that.